My name is Isabella Rodriguez. I'm 29 years old, and I come from a family of elite lawyers who called me the disappointment and cast me out for refusing to follow their predetermined path. 8 years later, I walked into my sister Carmen's high society wedding uninvited, transformed and successful beyond their imagination. When they tried to humiliate me in front of their prestigious guests, they had no idea who I had become. The looks of shock on their faces when they finally realized the truth? Absolutely priceless. Growing up as a Rodriguez meant living under the crushing weight of legal dynasty expectations. My father, Eduardo Rodriguez, wasn't just any attorney. He was a founding partner at Rodriguez, Hartman and Associates, one of Manhattan's most prestigious law firms. His grandfather had established the family's legal empire in the 1920s, and every generation since had expanded its influence. My mother, Victoria Rodriguez, served as a federal judge whose decisions regularly made headlines in legal journals. The Rodriguez name commanded respect in New York's legal circles before you even proved your worth. Our penthouse on the Upper East Side resembled a legal library more than a family home. Instead of family photos, our walls displayed framed bar admissions, judicial appointments, and pictures of my parents with Supreme Court justices and prominent politicians. Dinner conversations revolved around landmark cases and legal precedents rather than normal family discussions. My sister Carmen, 2 years older, embodied everything my parents valued. With her sharp intellect, commanding presence, and natural gift for argumentation, she was the golden child. While I struggled through constitutional law study groups, Carmen effortlessly graduated magna cum laude from Columbia Law School. Her beauty queen looks combined with her legal brilliance made her the pride of the Rodriguez legacy. Isabella, why can't you focus like your sister? Became the soundtrack of my childhood. Every report card, every school function became another opportunity to highlight how I failed to measure up to the Rodriguez standard. I tried desperately to meet their expectations. I stayed up until my eyes burned studying case law, joined the debate team, and participated in mock trial competitions for 3 consecutive years. But where Carmen had natural talent for legal reasoning, I had to fight for every B-plus grade. By age 13, I discovered my true passion, technology and digital innovation. I started a small website design business for local shops in our neighborhood, creating modern, user-friendly sites that helped them compete with larger businesses. I kept detailed financial records, created marketing strategies, and even hired 2 classmates when demand exceeded what I could handle alone. I was proud of my little enterprise that earned me nearly $300 weekly. Until my mother discovered how I spent my afternoons. Web design? Like some common technician? She scoffed during dinner. Rodriguez women argue before the Supreme Court, Isabella. We don't fiddle with computers for pocket change. My father lowered his legal brief just enough to add, "This technology nonsense is distracting you from your LSAT prep. Law school requires focus." I tried explaining the principles I'd learned about user experience, digital marketing, and emerging e-commerce trends, but my mother cut me off with a wave of her manicured hand. Save the technical talk for the IT department, Isabella. It's beneath our family's standards. My appearance became another battleground. Where Carmen had our mother's elegant features and tall, commanding frame, I took after my father's side with a rounder face and shorter stature. Nothing about me seemed to satisfy my mother's vision of what a Rodriguez woman should be.
Standstreter Isabella.
Judges notice everything about your presentation, she'd say, pushing my shoulders back painfully. Perhaps if you dressed more professionally, people would take you seriously in legal settings. These comments usually came right before important family gatherings, ensuring I'd feel self-conscious throughout. High school intensified the divide. Carmen had graduated as valedictorian and moved on to Harvard for her undergraduate degree, where she continued collecting academic honors. Meanwhile, I excelled in computer science and entrepreneurship courses, but struggled with the advanced humanities classes my parents insisted I take. The family narrative was firmly established. Carmen was the brilliant future legal star following in our parents' footsteps, while I was the tech-obsessed underachiever who couldn't grasp her birthright. At family events, relatives would gush over Carmen's latest achievements, then turn to me with pitying smiles and ask, "Still playing with computers, Isabella?" By senior year, I had secretly applied to computer science programs instead of the pre-law track my parents assumed I would follow. I maintained strong grades across all subjects, but my passion for technology only grew stronger. I had launched an online platform connecting small businesses with freelance web developers that gained popularity across several states. Yet I kept this success hidden from my family, knowing they would dismiss it as trivial. My high school graduation should have been a celebration. Instead, it became the catalyst for my exile from the Rodriguez family. As I accepted my diploma, graduating with high honors though not at the very top like Carmen, I looked out to see my mother checking her BlackBerry and my father reviewing case files. Neither looked up when my name was called. After my graduation ceremony, my parents hosted a dinner at our penthouse, ostensibly to celebrate my achievement. In reality, it was another opportunity to parade the Rodriguez legal legacy before extended family. My grandmother had flown in from Miami, and several of my parents' legal colleagues were present with their children, all law students or practicing attorneys. The dining room gleamed with fine china and crystal that my mother reserved for important occasions, though I suspected my graduation alone wouldn't have qualified. My father stood at the head of the table, raising his glass for a toast. To Isabella, who graduates today and begins her journey toward becoming the newest Rodriguez attorney this fall at Columbia Law School, pending her acceptance, of course. My stomach clenched. They had assumed, no, decided, my future without any input from me. The early admission letter from MIT's computer science program burned in my pocket where I'd been carrying it for courage. This was my moment to stand up for myself, to declare my own path. Actually, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, I've decided to study computer science at MIT. I was accepted with a full scholarship. The silence that followed was absolute. My mother's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. My father's smile calcified into something hard and unfamiliar. Carmen, home from law school for the occasion, smirked into her water glass. That's an unusual joke, Isabella, my mother finally said, her voice tight. Perhaps save the humor for after dinner. It's not a joke, I replied, pulling out the acceptance letter. I've been passionate about technology for years. This is what I want to do. My father's face darkened to a dangerous crimson. Put that away, he hissed through clenched teeth. We'll discuss this privately. But my mother had already snatched the letter from my hands, her eyes scanning it with increasing fury. This is unacceptable, she sputtered. No Rodriguez has ever been in technical trades. We are legal professionals, not computer repair people. Computer science isn't repair work, Mother. I want to revolutionize how legal firms use technology, make the justice system more accessible through digital innovation. Enough, my father slammed his hand on the table, making the crystal jump. You've embarrassed us enough for one evening. Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister and another prominent attorney, leaned toward my grandmother with a stage whisper. Always was an odd one. Not Rodriguez material, if you know what I mean. My cousin Thomas, already working at a big law firm at 25, gave me a pitying look. Law isn't for everyone, I suppose. Some people just don't have the intellectual capacity. The dinner deteriorated from there. My parents maintained icy politeness until the guest departed, but I could feel the storm building. As soon as the door closed behind the last visitor, my mother rounded on me. How dare you, she hissed. How dare you make such a spectacle? Do you have any idea what people will say? The Rodriguez daughter playing with computers instead of practicing law. I'm not playing with computers, I tried to explain. Computer science teaches. I don't care what it teaches, she shouted, her composure finally shattering. No daughter of mine will waste her life on technical gadgets instead of making a real difference in the world. My father, always more controlled than my mother, adjusted his glasses. Isabella, let me be clear. The Rodriguez family has invested generations in building our legal reputation. We will not fund some technical venture. If you persist in this foolishness, you will do so without our financial support. Fine, I said, fighting back tears. I have a scholarship and I'll work for the rest. It's more than money, my mother cut in. It's our name, our reputation. If you choose this path, you choose to do so as someone other than a Rodriguez. Carmen, who had been watching with barely concealed satisfaction, finally spoke. You always were the black sheep of the family, Izzy. Not smart enough, not polished enough for law. Maybe fixing computers is more your level. That hurt more than anything my parents had said. Carmen and I had once been close before academic competition, and our parents' blatant favoritism drove us apart. Her casual cruelty revealed how thoroughly she had absorbed our parents' values. Family meeting tomorrow morning, my father announced. We'll settle this then. I suggest you reconsider your position overnight, Isabella. I barely slept. By morning, I had packed a small suitcase, just in case. I knew my parents, knew their rigidity and pride. Still, some childish part of me hoped they would listen, would try to understand my dreams. The family meeting was held in my father's study, a room designed to intimidate with its dark woods, leather furnishings, and walls of legal volumes. My parents sat behind the massive desk like judges, with Carmen perched smugly on a side chair. I stood before them, feeling like a defendant at trial. We've discussed the situation, my father began without preamble, and we've reached a decision. Either you commit to law school immediately, or you are no longer welcome in this house or this family. The finality in his voice made my knees weak. You're disowning me over my choice of career? Don't be dramatic, my mother said coldly. We're giving you a choice. The right choice should be obvious to anyone with your advantages. I want to follow my own path, I said, my voice breaking. Why is that so hard to accept? My mother's laugh was brittle. Your own path. Look at yourself, Isabella. You're nothing special. Not particularly beautiful, not exceptionally brilliant. The Rodriguez name is the only extraordinary thing about you. Without it, what do you imagine you'll achieve? Each word landed like a physical blow. I had always known I wasn't the favorite, but the naked contempt in her voice revealed the full truth. To them, I had no value beyond my potential to extend the family legacy. I'd rather be ordinary and happy than miserable in a profession I hate, I managed to say. My father opened a drawer and removed some papers. Then you leave me no choice. I've already instructed my lawyer to remove you from my will. The trust fund established for your education will be dissolved. You have until this evening to remove your belongings. Carmen's eyes widened slightly. Even she seemed shocked by the speed and finality of their decision. But she recovered quickly. Well, that's settled then, she said with a small, cruel smile. I always wanted to be an only child anyway. I stood there, tears streaming down my face, as my father signed the papers with his Mont Blanc pen, the same pen he'd used to sign thousands of legal documents. With the same clinical detachment, he was writing me out of their lives. Don't call yourself a Rodriguez anymore, my mother said, standing to signal the end of the meeting. You've rejected everything the name stands for. I walked out of that study in a daze. Upstairs, I finished packing what I could carry, clothes, a few books, my laptop. As I zipped the suitcase, Carmen appeared in my doorway. You could just give in, you know, she said, inspecting her manicure. Tell them you've reconsidered. They'd forgive you eventually. I looked at my sister, beautiful, accomplished, and utterly devoid of compassion. Would you want me to live your life if I hated every minute of it? She shrugged. Better than being a nobody. That afternoon, I left the only home I'd ever known with $180 in my wallet, a suitcase of belongings, and a broken heart. As the taxi pulled away from the Upper East Side, I didn't know if I'd ever see my family again. What I did know was that I would either succeed on my own terms or fail trying. Either way, I would never again let someone else define my worth. The first weeks after being disowned were a blur of panic and exhaustion. With my family's financial support abruptly cut off and my full scholarship insufficient to cover living expenses in Cambridge, I had to defer my admission to MIT. The prestigious computer science program that had once represented my dreams now seemed like a distant fantasy. I called the only friend I trusted completely, Maya Chin, whose parents had always treated me with more warmth than my own. Stay as long as you need, she offered without hesitation. Her tiny studio apartment in Queens became my temporary haven, her futon my bed for what stretched into 4 long months. Finding work proved harder than expected. Without a college degree, my options were limited. I eventually cobbled together 3 part-time jobs: morning shifts at a coffee shop, afternoon data entry work at a small marketing firm, and weekend hours at an electronics store. Between jobs, I collapsed on Maya's futon, too exhausted to even cry about my situation. "You're working yourself to death," Maya observed one night as I counted my meager savings. "There has to be a better way." "I need to save enough for state university," I explained. "If I can't go to MIT, I'll start smaller. I just need a foot in the door." By fall, I had saved enough to enroll at New York State University with additional student loans I couldn't afford. I couldn't live on campus, so I found a tiny studio apartment in a questionable neighborhood with bars on the windows and unreliable heating. The hour-long subway ride to campus became my study time. That first semester, I took maximum credits while continuing to work nearly full-time. I survived on instant ramen and determination, often studying until my eyes couldn't focus. When other students complained about their workload, I remained silent. They couldn't comprehend what it meant to have absolutely no safety net. During my computer systems architecture course, I caught the attention of Professor Chen, no relation to Maya, a former Silicon Valley executive who had turned to teaching after a successful career. After I submitted a particularly innovative solution to optimize database queries, he asked me to stay after class. "This approach is unusual," he said, tapping my assignment. "Most students focus purely on technical efficiency. You're considering user experience and real-world implementation challenges simultaneously." I explained my background briefly, careful not to reveal my family connection. "Technology should solve real problems," I said. "If it doesn't make people's lives better, what's the point?" Professor Chen became my mentor, guiding my coursework toward fintech and legal technology. He recognized what my family never had, that my outside perspective on law might be valuable precisely because I wasn't embedded in its traditions. "The best innovations often come from industry outsiders," he told me. "They see problems long-timers have normalized." By my junior year, I had developed the initial concept for what would eventually become my company, a blockchain-based platform that streamlined legal document verification and contract management while ensuring transparency and security. The idea came from watching my parents and sister complain about inefficient systems and document fraud. Ironically, the very family that had rejected me provided the insight for my future success. I graduated summa cum laude despite working throughout college. The night of graduation, I sat alone in my improved but still modest apartment, surrounded by computer equipment and business plans instead of family. I allowed myself one evening of self-pity before refocusing on the path ahead. Professor Chen helped me secure a small business loan with his personal guarantee. "I've mentored dozens of students," he said. "None had a founder's instinct as strong as yours." The early days of my startup were brutal. I worked from a shared workspace in Brooklyn, sleeping on an inflatable mattress in the corner to save rent money. Initial pitches to investors met with rejection after rejection. "Legal tech is too conservative for disruption," one venture capitalist told me dismissively. "You don't have the industry connections to penetrate law firms," said another. Each rejection fueled my determination. I refined my platform, recruited 2 brilliant developers with equity offers, and targeted smaller law practices that bigger tech companies ignored. Slowly, we built a client base and collected data proving our system reduced document processing time by 45% while eliminating verification errors by 38%. 3 years into the struggle, we experienced our breakthrough. A mid-sized law firm facing a document fraud crisis agreed to pilot our system. Within 6 months, their operational efficiency increased dramatically while their risk exposure plummeted. They became our champions, introducing us to larger legal networks. Our first major investor came aboard after witnessing this success, a legal-focused venture fund that offered $5 million for a 20% stake. The validation was as valuable as the capital. With proper funding, we expanded our team and enhanced our product. Throughout this period, I lived as if bankruptcy were just around the corner. While my company, Legal Chain Solutions, began gaining industry recognition, I continued to live in the same apartment, drive the same used Honda, and work the same punishing hours. The financial insecurity of my early independence had left deep marks. Maya remained my emotional anchor. "When will you acknowledge you're succeeding?" she asked after a particularly good quarter. "You've proven them wrong already." But it wasn't about proving my family wrong anymore. Somewhere in the struggle, my motivation had shifted from spite to genuine passion. I believed in what we were building, a system that made legal services more accessible and trustworthy for everyone. As success mounted, I began working with a therapist to process the family trauma I'd been suppressing. "Your achievements won't heal the wound of their rejection," Dr. Patel warned me. "That requires different work." She was right. Despite creating a company valued at 9 figures, despite the industry recognition and growing financial security, I still woke from dreams where my mother called me worthless, where my father signed me away with his Mont Blanc pen. External success couldn't heal internal wounds, but it gave me the resources to begin that healing journey. 7 years after walking out of my childhood home, Legal Chain Solutions had evolved from a struggling startup into a legal technology disruptor. Our blockchain-based verification system was being implemented in law firms across the country, with a client retention rate that made our competitors envious. The platform I had conceptualized as a college student was now saving law firms millions while improving client outcomes, exactly the fusion of technology and legal innovation I had tried to explain to my dismissive parents years before. After a major legal conglomerate acquired our system for their 150-plus offices, our company valuation soared past $800 million. I remained the majority shareholder, with Professor Chen and our early employees holding significant stakes. Legal publications began taking notice, with Above the Law featuring me in their Legal Innovators Under 30 list. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had been cast out for refusing to become a lawyer, yet I was now influencing the legal profession on a scale no single attorney could achieve. Our software had reduced document fraud by 52% across implemented systems and freed up an average of 3.2 hours per attorney daily, time returned to client service rather than administrative tasks. With financial security came personal transformation. No longer running between multiple jobs or subsisting on ramen, I could afford proper nutrition, regular exercise with a personal trainer, and quality healthcare. The stressed, exhausted girl who left home had been replaced by a confident woman who maintained her well-being as carefully as her business metrics. I invested in a wardrobe that communicated success without ostentation, learned to style my naturally curly hair instead of fighting it, and found a skincare routine that enhanced rather than masked my features. These weren't changes made to meet my mother's impossible standards, but choices that made me feel comfortable in professional settings where appearance unfortunately still influenced credibility. "You've transformed," Maya remarked during one of our monthly dinners. "It's not just the outside, though that's stunning too. You carry yourself differently." She was right. Success had given me something my family never had, the confidence to be authentically myself. Without the constant measurement against Carmen's perfection, I had discovered my own strengths: strategic thinking, empathetic leadership, and relentless problem-solving. As the company grew, so did media interest in its founder. Business journals requested profiles, and legal publications sought interviews about legal technology innovation. Inevitably, questions about my background arose. "Your insights into legal systems are unusually nuanced for someone without formal legal training," one interviewer observed. "Where does that perspective come from?" I developed a carefully constructed answer that acknowledged my familiarity with legal environments without mentioning my family. I grew up surrounded by legal professionals, I would say. I observed both their dedication and their frustrations with systems that hindered rather than helped their work. It wasn't a lie, but it allowed me to maintain the privacy I valued. I had no interest in publicly discussing the family that had discarded me, either to criticize them or to leverage their name for credibility. My success would stand on its own merits. Occasionally, distant relatives or family acquaintances would reach out after recognizing my name in business publications. "Your parents must be so proud," they would write, unaware of the estrangement. I never responded to these messages, unwilling to either perpetuate the lie or expose the painful truth. My personal life, which had been sacrificed to survival and then to building the company, gradually expanded to include more than work. I developed deep friendships with fellow entrepreneurs who understood the unique pressures of leadership. I volunteered with organizations supporting first-generation college students, recognizing in them the same determination that had carried me through my darkest days. And then I met David. He was a public defender at the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office, where we were implementing our system. Unlike other lawyers who viewed our team with suspicion, David approached the technology with curious enthusiasm. "This will let me spend more time preparing cases and less time drowning in paperwork," he said during training. "That's worth its weight in gold." Our professional interactions evolved into coffee discussions, then dinners, then weekends together. David's compassion extended beyond his clients to everyone in his orbit. With him, I found myself sharing pieces of my past I had locked away, including the family that had deemed me unworthy. "They threw away someone incredible," he said simply after hearing the full story. "That reveals everything about them and nothing about you." David's warmth helped heal wounds I had carried for years. With him, I began to imagine a future that included marriage and perhaps children, a family created on foundations of acceptance rather than conditional approval. Yet whenever these conversations arose, I felt a lingering hesitation. "You still believe you're unworthy of happiness," Dr. Patel observed during therapy. "Part of you accepted their judgment that you were less valuable."
She was right.
Despite external success, I hadn't fully rejected the internal narrative my family had written. Complete healing would require confronting the past I had carefully avoided. The opportunity came unexpectedly. Browsing through New York Magazine in a salon waiting area, I froze at a familiar name. Carmen Rodriguez was featured in the society announcements, her perfect smile beaming beside her fiancé, Marcus Wellington III, described as a rising star in corporate law at a white shoe firm. The wedding was scheduled at the Plaza Hotel in just 8 weeks. Marcus Wellington III. I knew that name. He was the managing partner's son at Wellington, Cross and Associates, one of our biggest potential clients. Though we had never met personally, his firm was considering our platform for a firm-wide implementation. "Is this something you want to attend?" David asked when I showed him the announcement. "You could request an invitation." The thought made me physically ill. They wouldn't want me there. "Maybe not," he agreed. "But do you need closure? Would seeing them help you finally move beyond their shadow?" After discussing it extensively with Dr. Patel, I made my decision. I wouldn't ask permission to attend my sister's wedding. I would simply appear, not to create a scene, but to finally confront the past that still haunted me. "Just remember," David cautioned as he helped me select an appropriately elegant dress for the occasion, "you're not going to get their approval, and you don't need it. You're going for yourself." As the wedding date approached, I prepared myself emotionally for the confrontation to come. I was no longer the devastated teenager they had cast out. I was Isabella Rodriguez. No, I was Isabella Chen now, having legally changed my name years ago, CEO of a company revolutionizing the very profession they had insisted was sacred. Whatever happened at the Plaza Hotel, I would finally be facing my family as their equal. Or perhaps, though they wouldn't know it yet, as someone who had already surpassed them. The Plaza Hotel gleamed with opulent sophistication on the evening of Carmen's wedding. Valets handled a procession of luxury vehicles while doormen ushered guests in formal attire through the grand entrance. I sat in my Uber across the street, watching the scene unfold with a racing heart. "You don't have to do this," I whispered to myself, gripping my clutch. 8 years of absence had culminated in this moment of decision. I could return home, continue building my successful life without this confrontation. Yet some deep part of me knew Dr. Patel was right. Without facing my past, I could never fully claim my future. I checked my appearance one final time in my phone's camera. The woman who looked back bore little resemblance to the awkward teenager who had left home with a single suitcase. My hair fell in soft waves around a face that had matured into its features. The designer dress I'd chosen was understated but unmistakably expensive, projecting confident success without trying too hard. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out of the car and walked toward the entrance with practiced poise. The reception was being held in the grand ballroom, according to the elegant signage in the lobby. I followed the flow of guests, my confidence my invitation. The ballroom was transformed into a vision of white roses and gold accents, with hundreds of guests already mingling before the bride's arrival. I recognized several distant relatives and family friends, though none immediately noticed me. Moving to a less conspicuous position near a floral arrangement, I observed the crowd. That's when I spotted my mother, Victoria Rodriguez, standing in a circle of admiring guests, accepting congratulations on her daughter's marriage into another prestigious legal family. She had aged noticeably, with deeper lines around her mouth and eyes, though her posture remained imperiously straight. My father stood nearby, silver-haired and distinguished in his tuxedo, looking exactly like the patriarch he had always aspired to be. A flurry of activity at the entrance indicated the bride's arrival. Conversations hushed as Carmen made her dramatic entrance on our father's arm. She was stunning in a couture gown that emphasized her tall, slender figure, her hair swept up to showcase the family diamonds at her throat. Her expression held the serene satisfaction of someone who had followed the expected path and received all the promised rewards. I remained unnoticed through the ceremonial entrance and initial toasts. It was only when guests began to circulate again that an elderly great-aunt did a double-take as she passed me. "Isabella," she questioned, adjusting her glasses. "Isabella Rodriguez? Is that you, dear?" Before I could respond, my mother's head snapped in our direction with laser-like precision. Her eyes widened first in confusion, then in horrified recognition. She abandoned her conversation mid-sentence and cut through the crowd toward us with determined speed. "What is she doing here?" she hissed when she reached us, her voice low but venomous. "You are not welcome." Graydon and Harriet retreated in confusion as my mother gripped my arm with surprising strength, attempting to steer me toward the exit. I gently but firmly removed her hand. "Hello, Mother," I said calmly. "You're looking well." Her eyes swept over me, taking in the subtle signs of success, the confident posture, the quality of my dress, the healthy glow that had replaced the stressed pallor of my youth. For a fleeting second, confusion crossed her face before hardening back into anger. "Security," she called to a nearby staff member. "We have an uninvited guest." The commotion attracted attention, including Carmen's. My sister pushed through curious onlookers, her wedding gown rustling as she approached. Her expression shifted from bridal joy to cold fury when she saw me. "You are not invited," she stated flatly. "How dare you try to ruin my day?" "I'm not here to ruin anything," I replied. "I simply came to congratulate you after 8 years of silence." She scoffed. "You disappeared without a word, and now you crash my wedding? Security, please remove her." A hotel security officer approached hesitantly, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. As he reached for my elbow, another voice cut through the growing tension. "Stop right there." A tall, distinguished man in a perfectly tailored tuxedo strode toward us, Marcus Wellington III. Carmen's new husband looked from me to my sister in apparent confusion. "What's happening here?" he asked, his brow furrowed. "Just removing an uninvited guest, darling," Carmen said sweetly, taking his arm. "Nothing to worry about." Marcus studied my face more carefully, a strange recognition dawning in his eyes. "Wait a minute," he said slowly. "Aren't you?" "No one important," my mother interrupted. "Just a former family acquaintance who misunderstood the invitation list." "How dare you?" Marcus exclaimed, his voice rising with indignation. "This woman is—" "You have no idea, do you?" I interjected with a calm smile, making direct eye contact with Carmen. The crowd around us had grown, with guests openly watching the drama unfold. Several headphones partially raised, ready to capture whatever came next. Carmen's confidence faltered slightly. "What are you talking about?" My father pushed through the crowd, joining the confrontation with a thunderous expression. "Isabella, you will leave immediately," he commanded in the authoritative tone that had once made me tremble. "Before I go," I said, my voice carrying clearly in the now hushed ballroom, "perhaps you should know who you're throwing out." Marcus looked from me to my family in growing confusion. "Would someone please explain what's happening? Why are you treating Isabella Chin this way?" The use of my chosen name sent a visible shock through the assembled guests. My mother's face paled. "You know this person?" she asked her new son-in-law. "Know her?" Marcus looked incredulous. "Of course I know her. Everyone in legal technology knows Isabella Chin. She's the founder and CEO of Legal Chain Solutions." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Several of the legal professionals present clearly recognized the company name, their expressions changing from entertainment to surprise. "That's impossible," my father said dismissively. "Isabella has nothing to do with law or technology." Marcus laughed in disbelief. "Sir, with all due respect, Legal Chain Systems have revolutionized legal document management across the country. Their blockchain verification platform runs in over 300 law firms, including my own firm, where both you and I practice." The color drained from my father's face as the implications sank in. My mother looked from Marcus to me, her expression cycling through disbelief, confusion, and the first flickers of calculation. "Isabella," she said, her tone suddenly warm as she reached for my hand, "there seems to have been a misunderstanding. Of course you're welcome at your sister's wedding." I gently sidestepped her attempt at physical contact. "Is that so? A moment ago, I was an unwelcome former acquaintance to be removed by security." Smartphones were openly recording now, the wealthy crowd of lawyers and socialites unable to resist the unfolding drama. Carmen looked mortified, her perfect day derailing before her eyes. "Could we discuss this privately?" my father suggested, glancing nervously at the onlookers. "I think we're well past privacy," I replied. 8 years ago, you made it very clear that I was no longer part of this family because I chose technology over law. You said I would amount to nothing without the Rodriguez name behind me." I turned to address the gathered crowd directly. "What none of you knew was that the Rodriguez family disowned their younger daughter for daring to follow a different path. They threw me out with nothing but a suitcase and told me never to use the family name again." The shocked gasps from the audience were audible. Several older guests looked distinctly uncomfortable, while others seemed morbidly fascinated by this unscheduled entertainment. "Well," I continued, turning back to my stunned family, "I kept my promise. I built my company and my reputation without trading on the Rodriguez name or connections. And yet, ironically, my work has probably revolutionized more legal practices than many individual attorneys will touch in their careers." Carmen was staring at me with an unreadable expression, somewhere between anger and bewilderment. Marcus still looked confused, glancing between his new wife and me as if trying to reconcile conflicting realities. "I think," he said slowly, "we have a great deal to discuss." The confrontation had moved from the main ballroom to a private anteroom, though nothing about the situation felt private anymore. Videos of our encounter were undoubtedly circulating among guests, social networks, and whispers followed us as hotel staff escorted our small group away from the reception. Marcus Wellington looked shell-shocked as he loosened his bow tie and sank into a chair. "Let me understand this correctly," he said, looking between me and my family. "You're sisters, and you haven't spoken in 8 years because they disowned you for studying computer science instead of law?" My mother attempted to regain control of the narrative. "Marcus, dear, family matters are complex. Isabella made certain choices that led to her creating the software system our entire firm depends on." Marcus interrupted. "The same system that saved Wellington, Cross and Associates from obsolescence when digital transformation hit the legal industry?" My father's head snapped up. "What are you talking about?" Marcus looked at him incredulously. "The firm was hemorrhaging clients to more tech-savvy competitors and losing millions on inefficient document processing. Legal Chain's platform reduced our operational costs by 35% in the first year of implementation. The partners consider it the single most important strategic decision of the decade." He turned to me. "Which is why I've been trying to meet you for months. I had no idea you were related to Carmen." "We're not related," my mother said coldly. "Isabella rejected our family." "Actually," I corrected, "you rejected me. You said I was no longer a Rodriguez because I wouldn't follow your prescribed path." Carmen had remained uncharacteristically quiet, her perfect wedding makeup slightly smudged from angry tears. "You could have reached out," she finally said. "In 8 years, you never once called. Would you have answered?" I asked simply. Her silence was answer enough. The door opened, and an older gentleman in a tailored suit entered. I recognized him immediately as Judge Harold Morrison, a family friend and longtime colleague of my parents. His eyes widened when he saw me. "Miss Chun, what a surprise to see you here," he said. He looked around the tense room, sensing the atmosphere. "Is everything all right?" "Judge Morrison," Marcus said, standing. "Did you know Isabella is Eduardo Rodriguez's daughter?" The judge looked confused. "Of course He stopped, looking more carefully between my father and me. "Wait, you're that Rodriguez? The one who—" His voice trailed off as understanding dawned. "Good God. The anonymous donor is you." Now, it was my turn to be surprised. I had made significant charitable donations to several legal aid organizations, including a major gift to the New York Legal Aid Society's Technology Modernization Fund. I had done so anonymously, not wanting my family connections to become public. "You're the $10 million donor?" my father asked incredulously. "The one who funded the Digital Access Program?" Judge Morrison nodded, looking increasingly uncomfortable. "The Legal Aid Society has been trying to persuade Miss Chen to allow us to recognize her generosity publicly for years. She's insisted on anonymity." He gave me an apologetic look. "I had no idea about your family situation." The room fell silent as my parents absorbed this information. My mother's face underwent a remarkable transformation, calculation replacing hostility as she reassessed the daughter she had discarded. "Isabella," she said, her voice suddenly warm and maternal. "Clearly there have been misunderstandings. We've always been proud of you, of course. Perhaps it's time we put the past behind us and reunited as a family." The transparent insincerity made my stomach turn. 8 years of silence, and now, learning of my success and wealth, she wanted to reunite as if nothing had happened. "That's not going to happen," I said quietly but firmly. "I didn't come here seeking reconciliation or revenge. I came for closure." I reached into my clutch and removed a folded paper, a letter I had written years ago during therapy, but never sent. "Dr. Patel suggested I express what your rejection did to me, even if you never read it. Since we're all here, I might as well share it now." The room grew still as I unfolded the letter and began to read. "Dear family, when you disowned me, you didn't just cut me off financially. You confirmed the message you had been sending my entire life, that my worth was conditional, that I was lovable only if I followed your predetermined path, that who I was at my core wasn't enough. For years, I believed you. I internalized the idea that I was inherently deficient, not smart enough, not ambitious enough, not worthy enough of unconditional love. I worked myself to exhaustion trying to prove my value, first to you, then to the world, and finally to myself. What I've come to understand is that the deficiency was never in me. It was in your narrow definition of success, your inability to see value in different paths, and your withholding of love as a control mechanism. A parent's job is to help their child become the best version of themselves, not to force them into a predetermined mold. I don't hate you anymore. That's too exhausting. Instead, I've learned to be the parent to myself that you never were, supportive, accepting, and proud of my authentic journey. The company I've built does meaningful work that helps millions of people access legal services and thousands of legal professionals serve their clients better. I didn't build it to spite you. I built it because it was the work I was meant to do. The fact that you couldn't see that possibility says everything about your limitations and nothing about mine. I refolded the letter and returned it to my clutch. The room remained silent. Several of the wedding guests who had followed us, board members and legal administrators who recognized the significance of what was unfolding, looked deeply uncomfortable. Carmen was the first to speak, her voice uncharacteristically small. "I didn't know they treated you that way. I knew they favored me, but—" She looked down at her wedding gown, then back at me. "I was jealous of you, you know." "Jealous of me?" I couldn't hide my surprise. "You had the courage to defy them," she said. "To choose your own path." I've been following their blueprint my entire life, terrified of disappointing them the way you supposedly did." Her laugh held no humor. "And look how it turned out. You're revolutionizing the legal industry while I'm just another corporate lawyer in the family machine." My father cleared his throat. "Isabella, clearly we misjudged your potential. The Rodriguez family has always valued excellence, which you've obviously achieved. Perhaps it's time to bring you back into the fold, restore your inheritance and position." I looked at him, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time. The mighty Eduardo Rodriguez suddenly seemed smaller, diminished by the revelation that his discarded daughter had achieved more influence in his field than he had. "I don't need your fold," I said gently. "I've built my own. I don't need your inheritance. I've created my own wealth. And I certainly don't need your approval, which seems to be available only now that I've proven financially successful." My mother began to protest, but I raised my hand to stop her. "I didn't come here to hurt you or embarrass you. I came because I needed to face this final demon, the fear that I truly was worthless without your approval. Standing here now, I can finally see the truth. I was never the defective one in this family." Marcus stepped forward, looking between Carmen and me. "I had no idea about any of this," he said. "Carmen never mentioned having a sister." "Because they conditioned me to erase her," Carmen admitted, tears now flowing freely. "To pretend she never existed, like some family shame." She looked at me with genuine regret. "I'm sorry, Izzy. I was cruel to you. I participated in their rejection because it made me the good daughter by comparison." I nodded, acknowledging her apology, without yet accepting it. 8 years of silence couldn't be erased with a single expression of remorse. "I think," I said, gathering my clutch, "it's time for me to go. This is still your wedding day, Carmen. I truly do wish you happiness." As I turned to leave, Marcus stopped me.
Wait.
"You should know that I sought out the partnership with Legal Chain specifically because I wanted to meet you. Your reputation in the field is extraordinary. The innovation you've brought to legal technology has done more good than you might realize." I smiled slightly. "Thank you, Marcus. Perhaps we can have that meeting after your honeymoon. Professionally speaking, of course." My parents watched in stunned silence as I walked toward the door. The powerful Rodriguez family, who had once cast me out with casual cruelty, now seemed diminished, revealed as small people whose conditional love and rigid expectations had cost them a daughter. Judge Morrison followed me into the hallway. "Miss Chun, Isabella, I hope this unfortunate revelation won't affect your relationship with the Legal Aid Society. Your contributions have been invaluable." "The Society's mission is separate from my family drama," I assured him. "My commitment to making legal services accessible hasn't changed." As I walked through the hotel lobby, I felt lighter than I had in years. The confrontation hadn't gone as expected. There had been no dramatic reconciliation, no tearful family embrace. Instead, there had been something more valuable: truth. The truth that I had succeeded not despite being cast out of the Rodriguez family, but perhaps because of it. The truth that their rejection had freed me to become someone they couldn't have imagined. Outside, the cool evening air filled my lungs as I spotted David waiting by his car as promised. "How did it go?" he asked, opening the passenger door. I took one last look at the gleaming hotel, where the remains of my former family were likely scrambling to control the damage to their reputation. "It went exactly as it needed to," I answered, stepping into my future and leaving the past where it belonged behind me. David's car pulled away from the Plaza Hotel, carrying me from the epicenter of the familial earthquake I had just triggered. The magnitude of what had occurred was still settling into my consciousness. After 8 years of silence, I had confronted my family not as the rejected, worthless daughter they had discarded, but as a successful woman whose accomplishments they couldn't diminish. "You're very quiet," David observed, glancing over with concern. "Are you okay?" I considered the question seriously. Was I okay? The confrontation had been painful and messy, lacking the cinematic clarity of either villainous rejection or tearful reconciliation. Instead, it had been uncomfortably human, my family's naked calculation upon discovering my success, Carmen's unexpected admission of jealousy, the public unraveling of the Rodriguez family myth. I think I am, I finally answered. Not triumphant or devastated. Just free. David reached across to squeeze my hand. Freedom looks good on you. In the days that followed, the ripples from the wedding confrontation spread through New York's legal and social circles. Judge Morrison called to inform me that my parents were managing damage control after videos of our encounter circulated among legal professionals. Several colleagues had expressed concern about my father's judgment after learning how he had treated his own daughter. Your parents built their reputation on appearing perfect, Judge Morrison explained. This has complicated that narrative considerably. I took no pleasure in their discomfort. The girl who had left home 8 years ago might have craved such vindication, but the woman I had become understood the emptiness of revenge. Their prestigious careers, their social standing, their carefully curated image, all seemed hollow when measured against their fundamental failure to love unconditionally. 3 weeks after the wedding, Maya joined me for dinner at my apartment. So you crashed your sister's wedding, revealed yourself as a secret tech mogul, and exposed your family's dirty laundry in front of New York's legal elite, she summarized with a grin. Just another Saturday night for Isabella Chin. I laughed to spite myself. When you put it that way, it sounds like a telenovela. Life often does, she replied, turning serious. The question is, did it give you what you needed? I considered this as I sipped my wine. I think it did. Not because I humiliated them or proved them wrong, but because I finally saw them clearly. They're just people, flawed, insecure people who built their identity around external validation and prestige. And I realized I don't need or want what they have. Which is a life measured by others' expectations rather than personal fulfillment, I said. Success without genuine connection, achievement without joy. The confrontation had crystallized something I had been working toward in therapy for years, the understanding that my family's rejection had wounded me deeply, but their approval would never have healed me. That healing had to come from within, from building a life aligned with my authentic self rather than their prescribed path. In the months that followed, I channeled this insight into action. Legal Chain continued to thrive, but I delegated more day-to-day responsibilities to my executive team, creating space for meaningful personal projects. The first was establishing the New Horizons Foundation, which provided scholarships and mentoring to students rejected by their families for educational or career choices. I can't change what happened to me, I explained to the board when we launched the foundation, but I can help others avoid that painful path. The foundation quickly attracted support from unexpected quarters. Several prominent attorneys, including some who had witnessed the wedding confrontation, became donors and mentors. Judge Morrison joined our advisory board, bringing valuable connections throughout the legal education system. Many lawyers have children who don't want to follow in their footsteps, he confided. Your story resonated more widely than you might imagine. The work was deeply fulfilling. Each scholarship recipient represented a young person who wouldn't have to choose between authentic self-expression and family support. We provided not just financial assistance, but comprehensive emotional resources, including therapy and community building. I became the mentor I had needed when my own family cast me out. 6 months after the wedding, I received an unexpected email from Carmen. The subject line read simply, "Can we talk?" We met at a quiet cafe in Greenwich Village, neutral territory far from the Upper East Side. My sister looked different from the radiantly confident bride I had last seen. More subdued, with less perfect makeup and a simpler hairstyle. "Marcus and I are separating," she announced without preamble. "He says he can't be with someone who would participate in the kind of emotional abuse our parents inflicted on you." I hadn't expected this. "I'm sorry, Carmen. That wasn't my intention." "I know," she sighed. "It's not your fault. Meeting you at the wedding, seeing what you've accomplished despite our family's rejection, it forced him to reevaluate who I am, who they are, who we all are." She stirred her untouched coffee. "He's right, you know. I was complicit. I watched them tear you down for years, and I never objected because it elevated my position." Her honesty surprised me. "We were both children, shaped by their expectations," I offered. You followed the path of least resistance. Most people would. But you didn't, she countered. You had the courage to be yourself, even at tremendous cost. She looked up, meeting my eyes directly. I admire that more than I can express. It wasn't an instant reconciliation. Trust once shattered doesn't reassemble easily. But it was a beginning, a tentative bridge across 8 years of silence. We agreed to monthly coffee meetings, a careful reconstruction of sisterhood, without the toxic family dynamics that had originally poisoned it. My parents proved less capable of genuine change. When their attempts to publicly reclaim me as their daughter failed, they retreated into familiar patterns. My mother sent an elaborately worded non-apology. We only wanted what was best for you, even if our methods were imperfect. My father offered to put the unpleasantness behind us, with no acknowledgement of the harm done. I maintained polite distance, responding to their overtures with cordial but firm boundaries. The desperate need for their approval that had once defined me had finally dissolved, replaced by the quiet confidence of self-acceptance. 2 years after the wedding confrontation, my mother was diagnosed with aggressive ovarian cancer. Despite our strained relationship, Carmen called to inform me. She's asking for you, my sister said quietly. The doctors give her less than a year. The decision to visit was difficult. Dr. Patel helped me navigate the complex emotions involved. Forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation, she reminded me. You can release your anger without resuming a relationship that was harmful. I ultimately decided to see my mother once, not out of obligation but compassion. The imperious Victoria Rodriguez had been reduced by illness to a thin, frail shadow in a hospital bed. The irony wasn't lost on either of us, her life ending in a medical setting while I entered as a successful outsider to the profession she had revered. You proved me wrong, she admitted, her voice weakened but pride still evident. I didn't think you could succeed without us. It wasn't the heartfelt apology I might once have craved, but it was perhaps the most honest acknowledgement she was capable of giving. I accepted it as such. I succeeded because of who I am, I replied gently, not because of or in spite of the Rodriguez name. We didn't achieve miraculous deathbed reconciliation, but we did find a measure of peace. I forgave her not because she deserved it, but because carrying resentment had become more painful than releasing it. When she passed 4 months later, I attended the funeral alongside Carmen, accepting condolences from the legal community that had once been my expected home, but now intersected with my life on my own terms. Life continued to unfold in unexpected ways. David and I married in a small ceremony attended by the family we had chosen: Maya, Professor Chin, colleagues who had become friends, and scholarship recipients from the foundation who had become like younger siblings. Carmen came alone, our relationship still healing but genuine. Legal chain expanded internationally, and I accepted speaking engagements to share not just business insights but life lessons about authenticity and resilience. I never publicly disparaged my family, but I didn't hide my story either. It had shaped me, but it no longer defined me. The greatest freedom, I told graduates during a commencement address, comes not from proving others wrong, but from releasing the need for their validation altogether. Success isn't measured by titles, wealth, or status, but by the courage to live authentically, even when doing so comes at great cost. Looking back on the journey from that devastated teenager leaving home with a single suitcase to the woman I had become, I realized a painful truth that had taken years to fully accept. My family's rejection, while traumatic, had ultimately freed me to discover my authentic self. Had they accepted my choice to study computer science, I might have spent a lifetime seeking their approval, measuring my worth through their narrow lens. Instead, their complete abandonment forced me to build from scratch, not just a career or financial security, but an identity based on self-acceptance rather than external validation. The family I had created through friendship, love, and mentorship offered something my biological family never had: unconditional support for my authentic self. This is the story I share with you today, not one of revenge or vindication, but of the harder, more meaningful victory of self-reclamation. If you're watching this and feeling rejected, underestimated, or forced to choose between authenticity and acceptance, know that the path of truth is always worth the journey, however difficult. Have you ever had to choose between being true to yourself and pleasing others? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to hear more authentic life journeys. Remember that family isn't always defined by blood. Sometimes it's the people who love us for exactly who we are. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to write your own story, regardless of who tries to edit it.